Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. We're live for another live stream. And today I'm going to be showing users how to create a river village using the fantasy battle map style. A map not too dissimilar from the one that you see right in front of you. So I'm looking forward to this. Really enjoy making villages. They're not as complex as cities, and obviously it's an encounter map, so it doesn't have to be a super complex or large village. It could just be something very simple. Like this would work great for like a starting village of some sort. Hey Alice, glad that you are here. Awesome. Already one of my favorite people is already here. I love that. All right, so we're going to make a river village with the fantasy battle map style. Just some quick announcements. I already announced this last week or on Wednesday, but 2.0 is going to be released. So there should be an announcement for that right up here. If you click this little thing right here, it will kind of give you the information about what 2.0 gives you. If you're already on a studio plan and the plan doesn't get interrupted, the price will remain the same. So I'm glad for that. Let's go ahead and get started. Happy Friday, by the way, everybody. So we'll go ahead and create a new map, make it fantasy battle maps. I'm going to go with Ultra 4K editing resolution. Again, if you have a lower end machine, you might want to consider using a lower editing resolution. Happy Friday. We'll call this River Village. Now we're only going to do part one. There's probably not going to be enough time to make the entire village in 1 hour. But what we will do is we'll probably have enough time to put down the terrain, probably put up the walls and the structures that we're going to put there. And if there's any time left over, then we'll probably also do some interior decorating. And I think next month we'll just do an entire stream dedicated to interior decorating. It might actually be fun to reach out to some people and maybe they can give maps that they are working on, or they've worked on a map and they want help with interior decorating. Maybe users can send us clones of their maps that they need help with interior decorating, and then maybe we can go over that. So that might be fun. So definitely keep that in mind. As always, the first thing that I'm going to do whenever I'm working on any map is I kind of want to set the scale. And I think we'll just go ahead and turn the grid on right here. And the standard grid is 40 by 30 for this landscape aspect ratio. That's perfect because this is about the scale that you would probably expect. Probably for a village, I usually go a little bit bigger, going 20 by 15. But this is a village, so the scale is probably going to be a little bit better. And one of the first things I'll always do, besides setting the grid and the scale, is I'll always build the terrain, right? You always build from the ground up. It wouldn't make any sense to make the structure first and then build the ground underneath it. You would build the ground, and that would help you to understand where the structures come, where they fit, and all of that stuff. It's very, very helpful. Hey, first time chatter, by the way. Glad that you are here. Yeah, we're really glad that you're enjoying the tool. So, and 2.0 is coming right out the door pretty soon. So all these cool features are coming up real soon. So I'm super excited about that. So I've set that grid. What I need to do is make the terrain, right? So what I'll do is I'm just going to use the mask tool for now until 2.0 comes out, and then we'll be using different tools, and I'll show you how to put everything together. Super excited about it. And so I'm just going to fill this with the add mode of the mask tool. We just go fill all, and it will fill it with the FG, which is basically a layer mask. In the Inkarnate 2.0 where it is currently, or 1.0 where we are currently, there's an FG and a BG. Those are two paintable layers, right? There's also a top layer as well. When 2.0 comes out, you'll be able to have as many layers as you want. I feel guilty about showcasing that right now because it hasn't been released yet. So, but once it gets released, everything will be in the 2.0 editor, and I'm excited to showcase a lot of those awesome features. Okay, so I've got my grid set, and I want to make the river first, the most thing that's going to stick out the most. One thing I say in a lot of streams is what makes a really good terrain is having contrasts, right? Land versus water is one of those contrasts that work really well. So a river village kind of makes sense. So I'm going to use the mask tool. I'm going to choose subtract. I want to make sure that I have a circle brush. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make the river itself. And what I can do is I can zoom in to the grid, and then this way I can kind of decide like how wide the river is. So I've got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, about 30 feet at this brush size. If I make it a little bit bigger, I can make the river even wider. I think the full size 200 is enough. that makes it almost like 40 plus feet across. That kind of makes sense. It doesn't have to be a massive river. And the way that I'll set it up is I'll have the water go here like this, and then it bends and then goes like this. And so we have this nice, a sense of a diagonal, but it still has a curve to it, which you would expect, right, with these bends. And then I'll turn off the mask effects, because the more and more that you add to the map with the mask effects on, it can cause some lag. So I'll just turn those off. I don't need them. And then I'll establish some kind of texture to act as the water. If I just type in water in the catalog, you'll be able to see all the different water ones. I'll just use this core. I'm going to set to the BG layer and then just fill. And then I have this nice water for my river. Now rivers, clearly the shorelines aren't flat. The entire bank generally isn't flat. It has a mix between maybe a rock shelf or some kind of rock bed or pebble bed. It might have a sandbar or a rock bar. It'll have a bunch of ferns or river lilies going along the side of it or whatever. So when we do our terrain, we want to create some illusion that it's not just flat up to the river. So what I do is I like to use these nice, a nice stroke with the line tool called hill. And hills are great when you want to show a gentle incline. Let me just go and put it down so at least it's in my history there. So what you normally have is with the cliffs that we have is you see this kind of an incline, right? Here's the ground. Here, we'll make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. So this is the ground right here. And then the cliffs kind of give this straight up kind of effect when you're doing your map, right? It doesn't have to be perfectly straight up. It could be like this. But here's usually what the cliffs look like with the cliffs that you normally have. What the hills do is this is the ground right here. What the hills do is they create this kind of gradation, right? And what you want is, this is helpful when you want to show something that's not just a pure cliff going straight down, right? You want to show a gradual incline. Those cliffs or those hills are absolutely perfect for that, by the way. So we'll go back. We're going to go ahead and use the hill here. I'm going to use the free draw with a pen, but you can also use a mouse with this kind of pen, because this will be easier if you don't have a pen. And what's nice about using the pen with these hills is that they're craggy enough to where if you do a straight line, it doesn't look exactly like a straight line. So if you look carefully, it doesn't really look like that. It might be facing the wrong way, so we'll flip it. Let's give it a little bit larger scale. It's a little bit more noticeable, a little bit bigger. I think that looks nice right along the bank there. And then we'll add another one along this bank. Oopsie. And this time I'll use the drawing instead of using nodes. There we go. That looks good. Okay, so now we have these nice ledges here. That part looks good. I think I'll turn the grid off for now. I don't really need it at this very second. So I'll kind of turn that off for now. There we go. This looks good. But most of our structures will be up here, it looks like. We're also going to make some... the exact name of these are called hills. Let's go in the catalog here. So if you ever need to know what the name of something is, you can either hover over it and it will give you the name, or you can do this nice little tag over here, or this little thing over here in the corner. Right here, you'll see a hamburger menu, show names. Craggy Hill, Rocky Hills. If you're not familiar with the catalog, I recommend you just turn the show names on permanently. If you're a little bit more experienced user, you're a little more familiar with the Inkarnate catalog, then you probably don't need it because you've used it enough. But if you're new, the show names is extremely helpful, just to let you know. So I think that terrain looks good. For the river, I think I'll have most of the terrain where the away from the bank. I'll probably just have that be flat. So that way there's enough flat space to put some village stuff. What I'll also do is I'm going to take these right here and group them. I'm going to label that group right away and call it terrain. And terrain is basically going to be like hills, rocks, stuff like that. My trees, bushes, vegetation, I'll make a whole different layer or a whole different group for that. Once that's done, I'll move my terrain all the way down, that group all the way to -5, so that way it's always on the bottom, right? It's the ground. Everything else is going to be on top of that. So oh yeah, a watermill is a great idea. We'll add that in here. That's a great idea. I love that. Great suggestion. We'll do that. Very good suggestion. Cool. And then once it's at the -5, I'll go ahead and lock it as well. So this way I don't accidentally select it, because those hills are quite large, and so I'll probably accidentally select it. Now from here, I don't have to do a whole lot of terrain after this, because right now I should start making the structures, and then I can kind of build some terrain around that, like trees, not really terrain, but vegetation and stuff. So I'll turn that grid back on, and then I'll make sure that I'm going to go over here to my shape tool. I'm going to switch over and use a different shape. Why don't we just use, there should be a stone wall in here that looks good right here. This looks good. We'll use this wall right here. Make sure snap to grid is turned on so that when I snap to grid, it's on. I'll also bring the scale down a little bit on the size. And then when I zoom in, I can figure out just how much are these walls. Like how thick are they? Like this wall right here, if that's 5 feet, then that wall is almost 2.5 feet. So that's quite thick. So I could bring it down a little bit. I think that looks good. Walls can be really thick if there's a second floor. If there's not a second floor, walls can be thin, right? It makes sense to have the walls be thicker, especially in sections where there's going to be a second floor, because it needs more support to hold that other floor. But if they're all single floor buildings, you don't need to have the walls be super thick because it's not supporting anything at the top except for the roof, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. Now that I've set that, that's helpful. And I kind of have that set. I can go right away over to favorites. I'm just going to delete whatever favorite I have in there. And just so I don't accidentally lose that shape, I'm just going to favorite it right away. The way that you favorite is you select it, or you have it available right here like a stamp or whatever it might be. Like if I select this, then I can just go right over here and save to favorites, and then you'll see 2 tabs, one recently used, one favorites. So this will be really, really helpful, so I don't have to, when I go to make another building and maybe I've done enough shapes to where it's no longer in the recently used, I don't have to go back and rescale and do everything again. So favoriting is going to really help you out in your process. So now that I've set all that and that's been put together, that's helpful. And I don't think I'll use the stone walls. I think what I'll do is I will use a roof shape, because what's really nice, I find to be helpful, is to, if you have the ground floor, it's nice to show a little bit of roof sections with each building, because if you're outside, you would expect to see some portions of the roof, right? If you're inside, you wouldn't be able to. So showing some roof is nice. And in fact, I'll actually use a roof piece, because it's a village. Why don't we use something that's got like thatch? Let's use this hay roof right here. This looks good. It's about the right size. You'll notice that these kind of cross over. If that happens, you can always go over into here, and you should be able to change the curvature on it. Oopsie, it's lagging a little bit there. Sorry about that. There we go. Make sure it's set to grid. Perfect. All right, there we go. Turn caps off. Usually there's a little curve option here, and I don't see it right now. So let me 1 second go over to here. Oh, I guess it's just gone. I might have to save it, but we'll get to that in a moment. But I'll have to probably save and refresh. But this works really, really well, this piece right here. Just make it small enough to where it doesn't take up too much room. Like right here, that's about, I'd say that's very close to about 5 feet right there. So that's quite good there. And what I'll generally do is I'll make a series of shapes and snap them to the grid that are going to act as my structures. And some really safe structures to build are things like a basic rectangle or square. So if you're getting confused about what kind of structure to make, start with a basic square, and then you can add things to that. Like maybe we want one structure just to be a basic square. Then I'll go ahead and do another one that's maybe a rectangle, like this. Maybe I want to add a little pop out to it, like this. Now it's got a little pop out to it. Let's actually make the pop out a little bit bigger. Let's go all the way to here. There we go. Why don't we go one more over this way, like that? So we got a nice pop out there. We could also make another one like this. Let's make it another thing. And let's also maybe add in some angles. So let's add in a circle bit like this. Make it, there we go. And then we can put a roof piece on top of that later. Let's also make another one Let's make an L-shaped one. So one that kind of looks like this. And then we'll put another L shape kind of like this. There we go. Those look good. And then also I want to make a series of boat houses. These will be regular houses. Let's also make like a boathouse. And the way that I'll do this is I'm not going to show the thatch roofs for these. Instead, I'll use some kind of wood for this. Let's go with this one. I think let's go with this one right here. And then, oopsie, I accidentally had that selected. That's okay. Let's make the boathouses don't have to be massive, but they have to be big enough to be able to fit the boats in them. So about this size, about 15 feet. That looks about right. Let's also bring the scale up on the stamp. There we go. So we have some thick walls. There we go. That looks good. So now I have some boathouses, and I have these. Now from here, what I generally do after putting all these together is I'll also make the interior wall parts. So from here, I'll use that same wooden wall that I used right here. And then I have my snap to grid on, and I'll just kind of place these. Oopsie, I'm using the wrong shape. There we go. Let's go right about here like this. There we go. Oopsie. Let's turn merge shape off. My mistake. There we go. That's better. Oops. You know what? Let's also turn on snap to grid, because I think it's just going to get in the way. So let's bring the scale down a little bit, and then I'll go like this. So I have a wall there. Let's also use the pen to make this a little bit easier. So we'll go like this. We'll put those walls like this. There we go. That looks good. I'm just going to do it for every single one of these. That looks good. Let's do another one right here. And I am using shortcut keys to do some things. Like you can use the control key to snap. So the secret to doing a circle, doing circular bits, is more nodes, by the way. The more nodes, the more the circle, the more curvature that it will have. So just kind of keep that in mind for the future. And then there's one more. We'll do this one right here. There we go. That looks good. Plus, there we go. Okay. So those structures look good. We have our boathouse here. So now I can go ahead and just move these and kind of rotate them where I want them. This one's a little bit bigger. So this might do somewhere where there's more space. Move this over to here. All right. This big one right here, this is a nice big one. So why don't we put that like over here somewhere? Like right there. Let's put another one right over here. This shape looks good. Let's maybe rotate it like this. Then have it right here, just along the edge. Same thing with this one, just along this edge here. We're going to do more to these structures, but for now, let's just do some basic village planning here. Let's do this one. Let's put this one over here. Let's look at my space here. Let's put this one like this. There we go. That way there's kind of room. And then this one right here can go right here like this. And then one of these is going to be a watermill. So we'll definitely do that. I think this one right here will be perfect for the watermill, just right there like that. That looks good. And then we want to make a series of boathouses. So we'll put a boathouse right here like this. I want it to be just right along the edge of the water, and then we'll clear that out and fill that up with water. Let's copy and paste and put another one in right here. And I maybe want to consider adding in some kind of bridge as well. Why don't I move that out of the way? Move this over to here, and then we can make a bridge to connect both sides. So right here, there'd be a bridge that kind of goes across, and then we'll put a windmill right over here, or not a windmill, a watermill like right there. That looks good. And then we have a boathouse right here. Copy and paste. We can put another boathouse right there like this. Actually, let's not put it next to the watermill. That doesn't make any sense, does it? Okay, let's move this one a little bit over to here. It's okay if some of it's off screen as long as the interior part isn't off screen. So that looks good. And then the bridge will go across like this. So I should be able to put a boathouse right here or right here. Let's put one at this angle like this. And then I can move this over a little bit this way. There we go. That looks good. Okay. That looks good. Right there looks good. Boathouse, boathouse. I think that looks good. Another one right here. This looks good. Okay. Then I should go into that terrain, and I want to use portals to remove underneath So I can do that, or you can just use a clip mask, up to you. But I think what I'll do is I'll just remove those sections. So I'll go over to here, take this right here, and I can kind of just remove those cliff sections inside of there. Same thing here. Remove this cliff section right here. Same thing here. I'll remove this cliff section. There we go. Okay. And then I can take the subtract mode of that mask tool and then just kind of empty out these like this. So empty this out. We're making good time, getting things done. There we go. And now I have a boathouse that's kind of flooded with water. That looks good. Okay, let's continue adding a couple more things to the buildings. I probably should have done this in the beginning, but it's okay. Let's go ahead and take these wooden walls right here. I'm going to put them up at the highest layer. And you'll notice that there is this problem in the corners when you're kind of making a shape, right? And there's this curve option that you can do. But what I like to do is just take these kind of posts. I'm not sure what this is, like a column of some kind, and just put them in each corner. And what this kind of does is it kind of represents like a post or a pillar that's holding up the walls. And I'll put these on every single one, pretty much. I'll put it in this corner here, on every single one of these. And then I'll probably add more later, depending on how the interior decorating goes. So I'll put that one there. Every single one of these will go on here. And in fact, I'll turn off my grid for now so that way it's not getting in the way. That one's done. Let's go down here and do another one. Put it in this corner, rotate it. The reason why I should have done this a little bit earlier is so that I don't have to continue rotating all of these. If you had put these on in the beginning, like I should have done, then you wouldn't have to do all this rotating of stamps, but it happens. So sometimes you just get lost in what you're doing and you miss a step in the process and you have to do it later. It just happens. Ooh, I'm kind of seeing some spots too that I missed. So right here, fill that up with water. And I see I went over there a little bit. That looks good. Okay. Same thing over here. I'll add these to each corner. It serves two purposes. One, you would kind of expect a post in the corner to like hold the walls together. You would have more along the wall, but for now this is a good start. But it also just kind of, again, hides those inconsistencies in the corner, which look a little odd. I'll copy and paste. There's another part that I missed too that I should have done in the beginning, creating the doorways. But it's okay, it happens. I'll show you some cool tricks if you kind of accidentally started doing a bunch of stuff and then it's a little bit harder to navigate and find things in the catalog. I'll show you some cool tricks on how to deal with that. Let's go ahead and add this piece here. Copy, paste. There we go. Okay. All right. So when it's 45 objects isn't a whole lot, so that's not really a big deal. But something that I find very helpful when I want to be able to like only select shapes and stuff. If you go up right here with the selection tool, that's that little arrow, it's the V key. If you go click all like this, and it'll turn selection off for everything. Notice how there's nothing in the object, the right panel there with the objects. If I go over here to shape like this, it'll show all the shapes that are already there. So that'll make it easier for me to do things. I can go over to shape and then go over to portals. If you're not familiar with how the portals work, the portal will be the same size as what the grid is set to. So that's going to be very helpful. So in most doorways in a D&D game or a tabletop game, they're 5 feet, right? So that kind of makes sense. So I'll go ahead and just select each one and I'll turn snap to grid on. That should make it a little bit easier for me to kind of put things together. So let's put the door on this side right here. I'll put them on both. Oopsie, for some reason snap is going somewhere else. So there we go, like that, that one. We need to put 2 doors here. Let's have one door that opens up into the water here. We'll make it nice and wide so boats can fit in there. And then we need a land access. So we'll put a door. Let's move this actually over to this side. And in fact, one thing that might be helpful is to actually put the boat in so that we have a sense of scale when I'm working on this. So I'll show that grid. Go over here and put a boat down real quick. Perfect. There we go. Way too big. That right there is about 11 feet. That's a pretty long boat. So now I have a good idea of the scale. So now I have a boat there. That's great. And then we'll continue. We'll fix any of these little mistakes there in just a moment. Let's just continue adding in our doors that open up to let the boat get in. A door from the land access right there. Let's also put a door here. One there. Let's put a door here on this side. A door there. We need a door for the boat. And we need an entrance for the land. There we go. Oh, here we go. Let's do this one as well. Let's see here. It's a little off to the side. Let's put the entrance maybe like right there. On that one. And then I think all the entrances are done. Yep, boathouses. Yep, they're good. Okay. All right, so the next step, is, for me at least, is I like to create what's called the threshold. The threshold is basically that wooden part of the door frame that you step over, right? You'll notice that the doors, there's usually some kind of little lip that you have to step over on a door. Sometimes it's very subtle and sometimes it's higher up, but that's called a threshold. And adding in the threshold will make it look a little bit more realistic. I'll just use that exact same wood stroke that I used, but this time I'll make it a little bit darker to use contrast to represent that it's downward. So first thing I'll do is I'll bring brightness down, and then I'll also turn off shadows because the threshold shouldn't have any shadows. And then I'm just going to go across like this. You can turn caps off if you want, and then bring this down a layer. And then you have, again, what's called the threshold. That's the little part of the door that you walk over. So what I'll do is I'll select paths or lines only, and I'll just copy and paste that and just place that threshold at the entrance of every door. I don't remember. Maybe I should look that up. It's a good question. Let's go ahead and put that threshold. That's a good question, by the way. I think you can with snap to grid, as long as the grid is square. If the grid is hex or isometric, I don't think it will. But as long as it's square, you should be able to do that. Let's continue adding these thresholds. Every single one of these needs a threshold. There we go. And you're going to do the thresholds on every single room that if you have internal inside rooms or inner walls, you're going to also put thresholds on there. Every single one of them should have a threshold. Just looks more realistic, right? Let's go ahead and throw that on there. There we go. Another threshold for that door. Great. So all the thresholds are there. Also, you don't have to have a threshold. Sometimes you can throw in some stairs, which we might end up doing. But you should know about thresholds. They're helpful. Let's turn that grid off. We'll take a step back so you can kind of look at it. There's our boathouses. We have that. It looks good. We can even make some smaller outbuildings, like maybe a shed of some kind. We can throw those in there. That's good. We're at 208 changes. Let's save it. Yes, love using stairs as thresholds. In fact, using stairs in general, going from room to room, is actually just helpful. It creates this sense of depth. It doesn't make your buildings look super flat. So let's do that real quick so you can see it, as well as fixing this little mistake right here. Let's go ahead and subtract. We'll fill that up there. There we go. That looks good. Oop, I see a little bit of that cliff right there sticking out. There we go. Yeah, let's put some docks in real quick. Let's put docks in real quick. We'll type in dock. Now, this is an interior. This is inside. So we probably want to make things that are in the inside a little bit darker. And what we can do with the dock is we can do a couple options. We can have the dock go on the side like this. Here's option one. We can put a little dock here on the side going like this, and then you would access the boat like this. There's one option. That might be the easiest because it might be easier for a boat to go in this way than to have it go in like this if the dock is on the other side like this. So we can utilize our space a little bit by putting it like this across the side. And in fact, the door looks a little off. Why don't we fix that as well? Let's move the door all the way to here. There we go. And that should make it match with the little dock. It's inside, so why don't we bring the brightness down? There we go. Same thing with this. We'll bring the brightness down. There we go. And then I can take this dock piece and just kind of put it wherever I want, right? Let's put another one like right there. That looks good. That makes sense. We'll put another dock. Same thing right here on this one, like that. The shadows are a little thick. We'll fix those in just a moment. Copy, paste. Any more boathouses? No. Okay, that looks good. Cool. And then I'll just take a boat, and then to make sure that it works, I'll put one in each little boathouse. There we go. And then we can do those stairs. First, I'll kind of just take the shadow on this and just kind of bring it down a little bit. It's a little thick, so we'll bring the intensity down. There we go. Okay. So our boats look good. Let's go ahead and use those stairs we were talking about. So I kind of like the idea of stairs at an entrance. You see a lot of those really popular kind of Tudor style houses. They generally have a lot of stairs. And the reason why you would see a lot of stairs on perhaps medieval structures and things is because there wouldn't have been like really strong, there wouldn't have been like power tools, excavation tools for digging the foundation under the ground. That would have required a lot of manpower, money to pay workers or whatever to do all that. And so building the foundation on the bottom or on the or above ground, and then you would build the structure on top of that. So to show that there is a foundation that goes upward, making a staircase that goes up will kind of show that there is a foundation there. One thing you should do also when you add a staircase of any kind is you should bring the brightness down so that that way it looks like it's below. Remember the trick. Contrasts. Dark, low, things that are higher up are going to be brighter. So this is a way to show contrast. And I can take those same stairs that I just had and just put them on every single one. Just like this. And it works out well because we have that roof piece that's hiding the stairs side. So that works out great. So we're just going to copy and paste each one of these and put them in each section right here. Like that. There we go. As well as here. Copy, paste. There we go. That looks good. Let's take a step back and just kind of look at it. So now we kind of have a lot of our structure pieces. Let's go ahead and go back to terrain and we'll delete some parts. Some things that you can do is you can just do a fill and then have it be a clip mask and it will cause that to go away. You do need to do some things when doing it this way. Like you'll have to bring the layer offset down a little bit. Bring it to -5. That should bring enough space. And that will just hide it right off the bat so you don't kind of see it. So I think that looks good. That hide that. Let's go ahead and fill those up with a texture of some kind. Since it's the ground floor and because there is a foundation that's above ground, foundations are made of stone. So not all foundations, but this one will be. So let's go ahead and use a stone texture to represent the ground. We'll change the scale. Whenever you're working with textures, you're always going to have to make sure they scale with the stamps. So I'll bring the scale down. And just like before with the rules of contrast, I'll bring the brightness down. Make sure it's set to FG. And just so that it's easy, or I'll turn off the softness like this. And then I can just go in like this and just kind of fill in. And I'm using a mouse to do this, but you can also use a pen. There you go. Stone foundation for our floor, as you would expect. Where are we at for time? Sweet. We're getting a lot done in just 34 minutes. That's great. Yeah, we could do that in the future if we wanted to. For now, this is where we're at. I generally don't, I mean, for me, large maps are a little bit less practical in some regards. Like a lot of battle maps are generally pretty small from what I can tell, but we can make this one bigger. Like there's obviously we're going to put some outbuildings and then we'll also put in like shacks and things like that. For right now, there's only 4 buildings. Really, there should probably be about 3 or 4 more. About 6 or 7 buildings would probably be an optimal amount, but we just don't have enough room because of how wide I made the river. But we can totally resize this in future episodes. To make it even bigger if you wanted to. That works out too. In fact, we can even make some smaller buildings. Like, why don't we make a couple more buildings just real quick? Let's turn that grid back on, and I'll just make a couple small buildings. We'll go over here to shape, make sure that we favorites. Let's do this one. Let's favorite that right away. Let's also favorite the threshold as well as this one. We're just going to favorite these right out of the way. See, this is why you do it. I'll go ahead and turn snap the grid on. Let's make some smaller structures. And in fact, we have a lot of circular structures. Why don't we make round square structures? Why don't we make a couple circular ones? There's a circular one there. That looks good. I'll just copy and paste that and then do another one like this. There we go. Now we have a circular shape just already set up. Let's put a small one here, copy, paste. Put another circular one over here. There we go. Now we have some smaller structures. There we go. Let's go with this one right in this corner, just right there. That looks good. Okay. Now we have some smaller kind of structures that are there. So that looks good. Let's go ahead and fill those in, of course. There we go. Some smaller structures here. Much better. Okay. We just want to fill in some of that space. Oh, a granary near a dock. That's a great idea. Yep. All great suggestions. Loving it. Okay. Let's just take a step back. Where are we at for changes? We'll quickly save. And then what we'll do is, why don't we create a makeshift road that's going to connect all this stuff? Let's do that real quick. So as soon as it's finished saving, we'll go ahead and pull a texture of some kind. It's not going to be the end structure or the end texture that's going to represent the road, but we'll start with that. Why don't we use, why don't we go with maybe a dirt of some kind? Let's go with dirt. Let's use this one right here, this light dry mud. Let's go with that. Make sure it's set to FG. Bring my softness up about 62, and then I'll just go ahead and create a little road that connects this section that kind of goes around. This thing goes over to here to this. Let's go ahead and turn that grid off too. There we go. I'll go ahead and paint the road that kind of goes to here like this, over to here. Let's have a path that goes over to here. Let's create a path that goes through here. Just kind of our makeshift path. It's not going to be the final piece. Let's have the road that kind of goes over to here. And this is kind of cut off a little bit. I'm kind of noticing some problems here. Like this kind of cuts off a little bit. So I'll kind of move it a little bit more. Well, I'm going to resize, so it should be okay. That looks good. Why don't I just quickly punch in some darker grass to get those roads to pop out more? You notice that the roads are kind of, they're pretty bright, just like that grass is bright. So if I take a grass texture that's a little bit darker, let's change the scale like this. And if I go in and just kind of apply some grass, you'll notice that that road's going to pop out more. Why? Because I'm using a darker texture, right? So remember that rule of contrast? That road begins to pop out more because I'm using this darker green texture to get that to pop out. So we can put these nice dark greener textures in here to really get that to pop out more. It's not going to stay. We'll probably do some changes, but let's just add in a little bit of this stuff here. Let's put a little bit of grass here on this ledge here. There we go. Now, if you can tell, that road pops out quite a bit more, doesn't it, right? There's a lot of cool things we can do with the road. We can also type in like dry grass to make it look like we've been walking around. I use this one a lot. You can also use dirt from Sci-Fi. There's a lot of different textures that you can use, but I can say that overlays, as they're now called, they were once called alphas, but now they're called overlays. They work great. So if I apply this light texture, in fact, we can go to 100%. And I'll just, if you see here, now I've added a little bit more texture to the road. Put it here, a little bit here. And now that road looks a little bit more convincing, doesn't it? There we go. Where are we at for time? Oh, 39. Great. We're getting a lot done in this short period of time. That's nice. Whenever you're doing texturing, there's going to be a lot of changes that are going to be done. So just get ready to save after doing your texturing. Once this is done, then we'll go ahead and do let's do shadows for the walls so that way we can get the shadows right. I want to select all, turn all of them off, and then I'll go back to shapes. Now I can select all the shapes easily. And then I can go right in here to this advanced stroke option, turn shadows on. Perfect. Let's turn the shadows all the way up. Maximum blur. Bring those intensity up. There we go. And now we can really, really get those buildings to pop out more because we use those shadows to really get it to pop. So now we have those nice shadows. The structure looks like it pops more. Perfect. That's great. Let's do some interior walls. And I'll show you how I go about doing a little bit of architecture. A lot of these buildings are very small, right? They're not particularly massive, so you don't need to add rooms to a lot of them. A lot of them can just be a single room. But ones that are large enough to make a room, the way that I set this apart is if it's a small structure, there are really two rooms to me that are the most important. And that first room is going to be your bedrooms, your living space. Where do people sleep? And then where do they cook to eat, right? So if you're doing a village and most of the village buildings are small, you don't have to worry about adding a dining room and a living room or a ballroom or anything like that, right? Because it's a small structure. So the way that you should set it up is the first room that you walk into when you go into any kind of structure is it's probably going to be like a living space where the cooking is going to take place. And then other rooms will be on the side that are going to be closed off with walls. So let me turn snap to grid off. And what we'll do is when you first walk in like this, that first room is going to be like a kitchen space, right? So I'll go ahead and go across like this and then put in my wall. And this room right here that's secluded from where the main entrance is, this room right here will be a bedroom or bedrooms or storage or whatever it is. And this room that you first walked into, that will likely be your kitchen space. I hope that makes sense. And what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and move it in a little bit so that way there's a little bit more room in the cooking space. And then there's room there. And we can make this one large room or we can split it into two rooms like this. So now we have two rooms that are available. Why don't we also go ahead and create the doors? And when you have square rooms like this, putting the doors to the side, like to the far left or to the far right, will cause you to have room for putting beds and dressers. If you put a door directly in the center, notice that you don't have a lot of room on either side of where the door is and where the wall is to put stuff. But if you move the door off to the side like this, then you have some room to place furniture. So kind of an important thing to remember. If you move things over, move the door over like this, you'll have room to put things. So that's kind of super important when you're putting things together. So now we have those rooms separated. Why don't we also put down our thresholds, copy and paste a known threshold, and then place it down like this. Copy and paste another threshold. And then we can continue adding in the room for the next building, right? So in this one right here, there's not a lot of space in this room right here. So we might want to consider having a room be right here, or we can go like this and then put a little diagonal in there just to break up the 90-degree angles there. We'll put a little 90-degree, break that up, little wall there. That looks nice. There's not much room by doing it this way. We could also, if you don't want to break up that 90, we could also do it like this to where it goes across like this. And let's give it more room. Maybe something like about that space should look good. One thing that I'm always factoring in is where the fireplace is going to be. So I think this is just too small to fit another room. So let's not do that one. Let's have that all be one room. This one right here is big enough though. And it has a little shape that we can use. So let's put a room right here like this. That looks good. Put in the door. Remember the trick, put the door to the side. Then we'll copy paste that threshold. Threshold done. Let's go to this one. This looks big enough to have another room in it. So why don't we do that? Let's have it to be where it's like this. So we'll go across like this, and then we'll connect at an angle like that. In fact, why don't we do this? Angle, go across like this. There we go. All right, that looks good. And this is not going to be a, notice that I used a threshold. That's because this isn't a wall. This is a half step. Okay, so that means that you're going up like maybe one step up to this other level. It's not like a floor, it's a level. So just kind of remember that. And normally what I'll do with a level like this is I'll use a wooden texture underneath. So let me show you how I go about doing that. So let's start with this first one. Like right here, what we can do is to make it to where these rooms look like they're not just all on the exact same level, not floor, level. We can fill each one of these rooms with a different wood texture, and we can change the direction of the grain to make it more interesting. So if I type in wood, like this, and I'll just choose a wood texture of my choice, we're going to want to bring the brightness down, as always. And it looks like it's huge, so why don't we also adjust this? And then why don't we have change the rotation? Let's have one grain of wood going across like this. Let's turn off my softness too. There we go. We'll have one piece of grain going that way, and then I'll rotate and then have the grain going in an entirely different direction. Like this. Okay. All right, there we go. So you have the grain facing in different directions, and we can do that same thing here, right? Let's go ahead and change that grain. We'll rotate. Since the room is long, why don't we have the grain also following the length of the room? That kind of makes sense. And then let's do this one as well. Let's rotate it, get it facing the right way. Let's go with the length like this. There we go. Fill it in. Okay, there we go. And when you're making a half step like this, the half steps should be made with the same material as the threshold. So this wooden piece right here, this is the threshold. You don't want to use the brighter wooden color because that's going to represent the wall, right? So don't, when you're making a half step like that, use that threshold instead, so that way it looks like it's only a half step instead of a wall that's blocked off. So kind of helpful information there. Just take a step back and look at it. Cool. You could put a half step, you know, if you don't want to deal with a wall here, why don't we put another half step on this one? So let's do this. Let's do the half step, go up like this. There we go. And then we can have another half step on this one because I do like half steps quite a bit. They look nice. So why don't we rotate this so that where it at least follows the grain of the wood. So let's have it go maybe this way. One more should be enough. Let's see here. There we go. That should be enough. Put that down like this. There we go. Okay. Now we have those half steps. Another thing that you can do with the half steps is to use shadows. Oop, I just noticed an error on my part right there. There we go. Using object shadows can also create this illusion of a lip or a step. So if I go over here, go to shadow, we're going to do some changes to the shadow here so where it doesn't look like it's, oh, the shadow is on one side. So if I select that, go over here, we're going to go to the shadow settings real quick. We're going to bring the blur down quite a bit. And then I'm also going to do the adjustments to the offset. So where the shadow goes like this. There we go. Let's also change that a little bit. And then we'll bring the intensity down. Bring the blur down a little bit more. There we go. Let's go a little bit more this way. A little bit more down. There we go. And then I should be able to turn the blur on. There you go. And then you've created this illusion of a step. Right? And we can do the same thing over here. We'll take this one right here, and we'll take that same shadow technique, use the object shadows, bring it down. There we go. And then I should be able to create this nice lip from a shadow like that. There we go. Now you don't have to do that with thresholds if you don't want to, but I do that with half steps because it's meant to represent like a full step. A threshold doesn't have to be the same size as an actual step from a staircase. the threshold can be much smaller. You'll notice that when you maybe go through your front door, look carefully at the threshold, and you notice that it comes up a little bit, but it's not a full step. Yes, VR headsets while going on a break for milking goats. I love that. Great idea. Yes, I agree. To use the mouse would be much more helpful, Typher Zero. Cannot disagree with that. Absolutely. Where are we at for time? 50. We got 10 minutes left. Let's quickly save, and then let's go ahead and throw in the fireplaces, because that's going to be super important, because the fireplaces are going to be the source, going to be one of the major light sources. So let's put that together. And then I think most of the interior walls and stuff should be done after that. Okay, let's see here. Let's type in two things here. Let's do one, a fireplace. Let's use this one. I'll just place that down right there, and then we'll type in chimney as well. There we go, and there's my chimney. Perfect, there we go. Okay, so I have those. Let's go ahead and turn my grid on. If you don't, sometimes if you're not sure what the scale is at this point, I use a door as my guide for what a 5 feet is. So I'll go ahead and put this fireplace right here where the stone is. This kind of makes sense, because this way I don't have to create what's called a fireplace pad, which is generally made of stone or some kind of material that isn't going to burn. Okay. Yeah, I think the darker wood inside really contrasts well with the thatch roof. So I like that. So let's go and put a fireplace there on the metal, on the stone, as you would expect. Let's put another one right here, and I'm going to put it right next to the bedroom right here, so that way heat can travel into the bedroom and keep people warm, right? And that way I'm not going to put any windows next to the fireplace, so that way the heat doesn't escape. Let's go to this next section. Let's go ahead and put the fireplace right here. It is right next to the door. You can move it to right here and then put like a chimney pad. That works well. Like that way it could be different from the others, but I think right here by the door is okay. That's all right. Normally I don't put mine by the door, but I think right here is okay. I don't want to make a chimney pad. I'm too lazy to make a chimney pad. Okay, let's put the chimney, let's put the fire on this side, and this way the heat can kind of emanate outward and then go into those rooms right there. So let's do that. There should be, do I get all of them? Yeah, all the chimneys are there, or the fireplaces. Let's also do a chimney. Let's desaturate this. We'll make it gray. I'm going to push it all the way up to layer 5. And then I'll go ahead. These are kind of big. Why don't we use a smaller version of this? Let's use this one. This is a village, right? It's not giant ones. The browser I'm using is Chrome. If Chrome is acting up on you, sometimes right now there is a WebGL error with Chrome. And if you're experiencing that issue, usually when you open up the dev console, it'll say assertion failed. If you see that, switch to Opera, but don't switch to Opera GX, because I'm noticing that it doesn't work as well with Opera GX. It works much better with just Opera. So if you have that problem with Chrome, that WebGL error, definitely switch over to Opera until Chrome can get their butts in gear and get that fixed. All right, so we'll put a single chimney there. We'll copy and paste, and then we'll do it to all the other ones as well. Oops, there should be one right here. There it is. That looks good. Oop, that's not even attached to the wall. Oopsie. Sometimes I'll also put a little stone section on the wall as well, where the fireplace is, so that way it doesn't superheat up the wood. I'll show you that in just a second. Let's just put in everything first, and I'll kind of move from there and show you how to do all that. I should have probably created one and then just copied and pasted it, but mistakes, right? So I'll take a stone section like this, and I'll span it the length of the fireplace like this, and then I'll place that right there like that, and then I have this nice stone section right here, right along the fireplace, so that way it's not superheating up the wood. So I'll copy and paste that section like this to every single one of them. Should have just copied and pasted as a group and then put it down, but it's okay. It happens. There we go. Another one like this. Another one. There we go. And then the last one we'll put right here. There we go. So that works out well. Oopsie, we'll put that right there. And then we'll kind of move this a little bit this way to where it's a little more centered. There we go. Yeah, let's center it a little bit like that. There we go. Looks good, looks good. Where are we at for time? 55, cool. We still got a little bit of time left. That looks good. Let me see. Fireplaces are set into place. Cool. Looking good. Yeah, this looks good. We'll quickly save it. You know what? We can go on for about, I don't mind going on for another 10 or 15, maybe even 30 minutes, because this is a lot of fun. So let's let that save, and then we will do a couple options here. I did want to do a little bit of interior decorating because I wanted to show people how I approach interior decorating, because I find interior decorating to be actually somewhat challenging. It can be, but I have a technique that I use when I'm doing interior decorating, and it's kind of a mix of a couple things. Okay. All right. Thank you, Jonathan. And Lord Brady, yes, we'll do that. Okay. So let's do a little bit of interior decorating. We'll go on for just a little bit longer. We can start with just one building for now. But the way that I approach interior decorating is pretty simple. It's two things. One, it's function, and it's fantasy, right? When it comes to interior decorating. What I'll do is I'll start with function first. And what I mean by function is whatever the function of the room is, that's where you're going to expect what kind of objects to put in that room. Now, this first room is going to be your living space. It's a small room. It's not very big. It's only like 10 feet across, maybe 15 feet across, and maybe like 50, maybe 40 feet in length. So it's not a massive room. So one of the first things that you can put in this beginning room is like a table, because you need to do the food preparation of some kind, right? So let's just use a basic table. I'm going to go ahead and put it up against where the door is, so that way I can see what 5 feet is. This right here would be like a 10-foot table, if not longer, maybe even like closer to 11 feet. So this is a big table right here. And this table is probably going to take up some space. All right, you can put it off to the side here if you want to put like a bucket of water for doing dishes or for cleaning. So we can push that to the side like that. That way there's room on the side. So that's a good step. Now, since it's a village and it's not a very big structure, we could have a couple things here. One, we could take like a rocking chair or a chair to sit next to the fire. Maybe they want to eat. So if we put like a rocking chair right up against where the fireplace is, that's not a bad idea. Maybe we want to put a little end table next to it. We could use a stool as an end table right there. Maybe that's where this inhabitant eats. If there's not enough room for that, you could also just put the same where the food preparation goes. That's where they also sit to eat, right? If you have a little bit of extra room, then you can always put in some kind of table for eating. So we can put in a smaller table. Let's maybe choose, I think I saw a smaller table. This one right here is a little bit smaller. We could just put that right up against the wall right here like this. And maybe they have guests or something, so we can just put 2 stools right against here for eating. So that's one option. Again, they could eat next to the fireplace. They could eat next to here. If you want to save space, this is a tight space. You don't have to do that. Since I put that against that wall, I could move the table up against here, because when I start putting in more objects, one thing I'm thinking about is something called flow of traffic. How is it that players are moving around? So when I'm doing my flow of traffic, you see how I moved this over to here? The reason why I moved it was because the flow of traffic issue that came up. So let me go ahead and just show you real quick. So when I am doing my flow of traffic, you see how this piece is right here? This cleared up room right here. So maybe they want to move the chair back. They're not going to hit up against that table, right? So when you're doing interior decorating, think about proximity to other things, and then think about flow of traffic. The way a flow of traffic works here is that they go in like this, and they have options. They can go and prepare food. The food's already prepared. They can go and eat. They want to sit by the fire and enjoy themselves. or maybe they want to go into the bedroom space and rest. Okay, so always think about flow of traffic. It would be weird if you had a table in the middle of the room, right? Because it would take up space. Now they'd have to maneuver all around that. So putting things up against walls is a great way to clear up space and make sure that there's a proper flow of traffic. So interior decorating requires a little bit of knowledge about spatial awareness. How is it that the players are going to walk around? Okay. All right, for now, I think that's all the furniture that's going to be in this room. I think the other thing that you could probably put in here is maybe a cabinet. And I use dressers for cabinets all the time. So if you just type in dresser, you'll see that there are these dressers right here. This is the room is running out. So why don't we just put a small dresser right there in that corner? It's a good place to put maybe silverware, plates, things like that, right? So otherwise, you'd have to store it maybe underneath the table somewhere. And it's small enough to where it's not as big and wide as the table, so there's still enough room to move the chair back a little bit. So just kind of keep that in mind. So I think that's about all the furniture that we need to do for this first room. Everything else is going to be like details like pottery, things like that. Let's move into the next room. The first thing that I do when I decorate a bedroom is I put in the bed, because the bed is probably going to be the largest item in the room. And then that way I can figure out all the other furniture where it goes in proximity, right? It's just in real life, right? When you move into a house, you generally put the bed together first. And then that way you can kind of figure out where the rest of the furniture is going to go. So let's do that. I'll go ahead and type in bed. And we'll go ahead and just use these beds right here. Now, when it comes to the scale of beds and stuff, there's some rules. Like if the bed was assembled in a workshop, then it can be bigger than the door frame itself, right? Because it was assembled and put together. But maybe some items, but using the door frame is generally a good guide on what to put in a room, especially if it's an object or piece of furniture that wasn't assembled somewhere else. Like maybe there's not enough room to assemble a bed in this room. So you would have the bed be smaller than the door frame to show that it fit in. So let me go ahead and use this. This bed's about 5 feet across. So it's a decent sized bed. I'll go ahead and put that in that corner there. Now there are a couple options when you're doing your beds on where to place them. Because this is a queen size bed or a double, I like to put them in the middle against a wall, because that way each person has access to that bed on either side, right? If you put it up against the wall like this, guess what? The person who sleeps on the inside will have to walk to get to that other side, right? So putting a double bed in the center like this allows for room for the occupants to get to both sides. Some other things that you would kind of expect are end tables, just like you would in your normal bed at home, right? You would have some kind of end table to put a lamp, candles, maybe with a book that you're reading, whatever it might be, right? I think there's something called a bed table. Let me try flipping in that. There we go. Yeah, here are the bed tables. Great. And we can scale it down a little bit to where they're not super massive. Like that's about 5 feet there, maybe a little bit smaller. About 30 is fine. And it's up to you. You can put an end table on both sides. We'll rotate it to where the grain's facing different directions. And one thing that I'll do is that I will not have my tables be perfectly lined up with the furniture around it. Usually when someone like put something on an end table or they bump into it with their hip, it moves a little bit. So to show a sense of use, I'll rotate it just a little bit to where it's offset from the walls, and that way it looks like it's been used by the people, right? So some end tables are good. Some other things you're going to want are going to be like dressers, right? A good place to put a dresser is right, like everything else, up against a wall. Why don't we put it up against this wall right here? This will also keep it to where it won't get in the way of the flow. You notice that if I put this here like this, even up against this corner, what it does is it limits the room right here of movement. But when I move it up against this wall like this, you'll notice that there's a much more room for moving for the players, right? So that kind of makes sense. Now you have this dresser here that's going to open up like this. That's going to be helpful. Some other things that you might want to put in the room are, sometimes I like to put a bench at the end of the bed, at the foot side. So if I type in bench, the reason why is because benches are something that you maybe would put like some clothes, or maybe you want to put some extra pillows on there or blankets, whatever it might be. Just putting something at the foot of the bed there allows that to happen. Like maybe people want to sit down on this little bench right here and not sit on the bed to put on their shoes or put on their pants, whatever it might be. A little bench there, and it's not going to block too much room. So a little bench at the foot side of the bed is a good choice. Some other things that you might want to throw in are some chairs. We already have a bench right here, but maybe you want to sit down on like a chair and read a book. So maybe we can put a little chair just right here in this corner, a little rocking chair right there, or you can move it over to here or whatever. I think this corner works just fine. So you have a little chair that you can sit and read. And since we're having a reading chair there, why don't we also add in like a bookshelf? And you know what? What I'll do is to break up the symmetry that I see with these end tables is I'll just put one end table there, and then I'll put a bookshelf right here. And I'll move this a little bit more this way. It can be off center a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect, as long as there's enough room for people to get to one side. And then we'll put a little bookshelf there, and then we can also put a bench. Put that chair right there with that. And now you have a place where you could sit and read your stuff. So kind of helpful there. So you're kind of getting the idea about interior decorating. It's about function, which is what we start out with. And then after function, you'll do the fantastical elements. So interior decorating, it's not complex, right? Oh yeah, a candle of some kind of light source. You can put a candle in this corner on this end table. You could put it on top of this cabinet, this right here for your closet stuff. You could put it here on the bench. If you want to have a natural light source, you could do that too. We could type in a window. And natural lighting is would have been the best way for medieval peoples to get lighting instead of using a candle. So why don't we just put in a light or put in a window? And one of the best places to put the window is right here at the head of the bed, or you can put it right here like this so that the light comes in. It's up to you which one you think is best. It could be lined up here, or it can be right here. I don't really have a personal preference on where it goes. This one kind of works well right here because at least it lines up with the bed, but you don't have to do that. You could just put it into this corner or this side right here. That works well. In fact, why don't we put some more windows in here? Let's have the window in the bedroom, and then we'll have no windows for this. Let's put a window right here, actually. This will work good. And then this natural lighting right here can be used to kind of light up the kitchen space to make sure that there's lighting. So that looks good. Yeah, candles are great, but that is a detail, by the way. So we'll throw in candles when we are past the furnishing part. Okay, I think, let me just take a step back and look at it. So far, we've got let me just go take a step back. When the players walk in, there's a kitchen space for eating, cabinet for the dishes. There's a place for sitting and eating or preparing food, sitting and eating, a place for lounging right by the fireplace. When they want to retire, they can go into the bedroom, go lay on the bed, sit and read a book. Yep, that looks good. Okay. Where are we at for time here? 8 after? Perfect. Why don't we do, since we're doing interior decorating, why don't we do the detail part next? That way we'll go through all the stages, and that way you'll know, and that way I don't have to wait for you guys don't have to wait for the next episode. So once you've gotten in all your furniture, and remember, you always start with the largest furniture first. When I go with details, it's the same concept. It's functionality, right? So let's do some easy stuff. So for starters, some of the most obvious stuff is you want to have some kind of food stuff, right? So why don't we take a bucket, or there should be a water bucket of some kind. Let's go ahead and use this water bucket right here. This is going to be for doing dishes, and to show that the table is high up and it has tall legs, we'll put the water bucket just slightly underneath like this, and that way it can be lifted up and then put on here, or it can be on top like this where it's going to act as a dish station. So water is always a good choice for doing dishes. Let's do about that size. It's about 5 feet. Let's do about that size. There we go. It's with a table for our kitchen stuff. Why don't we type in kitchen? Oopsie. The kitchen. I'm not sure what that is. Oh, there we go. Okay, that looks good. Let's see here. A couple things are, we could put some food. So maybe like this person is a farmer and their farm is off screen somewhere, or we'll resize and get it. So why don't we put some carrots down? Let's put them underneath to show that the table is kind of high up. And then what I'll do is I'll bring the brightness down to show a little bit of contrast. And why don't I put this a little bit more in the light? Like that. Well, actually, this corner is fine. Food goes there. That looks good. Why don't we put in some plates and stuff? Let's go with some wooden plates. Let's go ahead and make sure they're up on the proper layer. One there, some plates. Let's put a plate there. That looks good. Okay. Let's put in some silverware as well. Okay, there's some knives. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Let's put a knife there. Oh, here's some smaller silverware. Why don't we put that right next to there? There we go. That looks good. Silverware, as you would kind of expect. Let's also put some like prepared food. Let's make sure that, there we go. I'm noticing that it's not, the shadows aren't being affected. So why don't we push this down a layer? There we go. Notice here that the shadows from the walls are not affecting the stamp. That's problematic. I want the shadows to affect that. There we go. That looks better. There we go. That looks good. All right. Let's go put some food down. Since there's a knife right there, why don't we throw in some sliced tomatoes? Or we can do, since there's some carrots down there, why don't we do a sliced carrot? Right? Just stick with the continuity, right? There's carrots there. There's that. There's a dish. We could put one dish in the water too. Cool trick. Let's just go with blend mode luminosity. Bring the brightness down. Bring the contrast down a little bit. And then we have a little plate in the water right there. That's a good little detail. Why don't we also use blood to represent water? I don't really care for the blood of fantasy battle maps, but this stuff works great because it's pooled. So if we go all the way, bring the hue all the way to the left, or maybe a little bit this way. Make sure it's around the same blue that's inside of there. That looks good. Let's use this one right here. Let's put some water on the ground. And then why don't we use blend modes? Let's use the proper one. Screen. That looks good right there, that one. That is set to color dodge. There we go. So we have some water on the ground there. Let's move these carrots over to here, closer to where the carrot is. Put this over by the water. That looks good. Some on it and some right there. There we go. So it looks like some water spilt on the ground, as you would expect. That looks good. Okay, why don't we throw in some details, like we need some mugs, some cups. Let's put a couple mugs up top up here. Let's put a mug right here. And then let's also put a mug maybe on the end table. That looks good. You don't need to have that many. We could always change them out, but it's nice to throw in random stamps just to get a feel for what it looks like with the space being taken up. I'll probably switch those out. Let's go throw in some firewood. So there should be some sticks, right? You have a fireplace there. What's the fuel? How is that working? Let's scale this to where it's up to the fireplace to make sure that the wood can actually fit in there. That looks good. Let's use a bigger one. Let's go with this one. That looks good. That's big enough. Why don't we also, as you would expect, maybe an axe of some kind leaning up against the wood would be a good idea. There we go. So a little bit of wood and an axe. That kind of makes sense. That looks good. That looks good. Okay. All right. That looks good. Okay. Let's go ahead and remove some of these mugs, and we can maybe throw some other things in there. Typical coffee enjoyer. You can never have too many mugs. I love that. Okay, let's go into the Let's go into the bedroom, and maybe we'll have some adventurer gear floating around. Why don't we put a backpack just right there on that bench, leaning up against the bed, like that. Maybe they're going on a trip. So let's go ahead and throw in a bedroll as well. Let's put the bedroll on the ground and make it look like it's underneath the bench to create more depth. Right, there we go. That looks good. Bedroll. You've got your chair there for reading. That looks good. Why don't we put a book in that chair? Right, there's reading going on, so let's grab a book. Let's bring the scale down a little bit. Let me make sure it's about the same size as these books. There we go. So we got a nice little book there. Why don't we throw some more books as well? Let's maybe put an open book up here, right on there like that. And then why don't we also put some pages? If pages have been torn out, that's gonna ask some questions like, why are there pages torn out of the book? And to do that, I should scale it up to where the page is about the same size as the book that I want to represent that's got the pages torn out. About that size looks good. That's good. Let's take it down a layer. Let's bring the brightness down for contrast. And let's place just a couple pages on the ground. Like that. There we go. There you go. So now you got some pages on the ground, some nice details there. Why don't we also have this person be a troubadour? The person who lives here is a troubadour. A troubadour is like a traveling minstrel of some kind. So why don't we put in a little guitar or a lyre or whatever it's called. I don't remember what these are called. They're not called a guitar. Let's put this there. Bring the brightness down just a little bit. There we go. Little instrument in there. There we go. Looking good. Looking good. Let me take a step back. Okay. And the last bit of things that we can throw in here are some crates and barrels. If you're ever confused about what to fill in the negative space, crates and barrels are the way to go. I think it's a lyre. Yeah, that's what I thought. I want to make sure the lyre is not that like a harp. I sometimes mix those up. Okay. Yeah, a little crate there looks good. Why don't we also let's put in a potted plant just for some greenery. I like to use these crates sometimes. These crates work great for that. So I'll put that crate there, and then let's just choose a flower or a bush of some kind. Now the bush might hide the entire crate. Let me see. No, it doesn't hide it. Perfect. That's good. So you can still kind of, why don't we make it a little bit, why don't we make the bush just a little bit smaller so you can kind of see a little bit of the crate. There we go. And I'll put that in the corner there. A little bit of flower. That looks nice. There we go. A little bit of greenery is always a nice touch. Let's go put something on top of this shelf right here. Why don't we actually put the candle on there? Why don't we use this one? This is like the candle on a platter. Let's put that up on top of there. So that will be another light source. That'll work out fine. There we go. And then I think there's a light source already in this room, both the window and the fireplace. This one also has a window plus that candle there. So we'll have multiple light sources. Where's the basil? I love that. You know what also is a good choice? Why don't we use some hanging food too? This will also increase the, this should increase the sense of depth as well. So there should be some hanging food. Let's place these. Oopsie, go down a layer. Okay, there we go. Some hanging food like right here, right over the dishes is fine. Let's put some hanging food right over here like this one, and then another hanging food like maybe like this. There we go. Now you have some hanging food there. That looks good. Nice. Okay. That looks good. Okay. Where are we at for time here? 19. Let's use these last 10 minutes to do a little bit of light and shadow work. And I'll show you kind of a cool trick that I've been doing lately. I'm going to use the shape tool to create shadows, and I'll show you how to go about doing that. First, I'm going to select all, and then I'm going to lock it so I don't accidentally select anything. That's our first step. Then I'm going to take a shape. I'm going to use fill, no stroke. Color is going to be black, but it can be whatever color that you want. I'm just going to use black for now. It could be purple, blue, green, whatever color you want. Remember, it's art, right? So it can be whatever color you want. I might change the color later, but for now we'll just stick with this. And I'm going to use the pen, fill. I'm going to go blur, radius 40, and I'm going to bring the opacity down to around 40 something. And then I'm going to go like this. Make sure that merge shape is off. And then I'm going to go like this. Go plus. You're going to notice that there's a shadow now inside of the room there. There's that nice shadow there. And then from there, what I'll do is I'll go over back to shape tool, go to brush, go to subtract mode. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just create the light kind of going off and filling up the room like that. Same thing, this light's going to be going into here. So why don't we have the light going off in like that? There's also a light source there. So let's have that light source going in like this. There we go. And now we have our shadows that are kind of built in there. Let's also put some light sources in there just to make it a little bit more dynamic. So let's throw in this orange one for the fireplace because you would expect it to be the kind of that color. So we'll use this nice dark orange color there. That'll work really nice. Why don't we also make some shadows from that light source projecting? So cool little trick. I'm just going to copy and paste the rocking chair itself. I'm going to turn off the shadow. I'm going to bring the brightness all the way down, bring the opacity down. I could also, you don't have to blur it. So one of the rules about shadows is that the closer the light source is, the less diffused or the less faded or blurred the shadow is. So if the light source is far away, you can bump that blur up quite a bit. But if the light source is close to the object, then you don't have to blur it quite as much. So I can take that, transform it, and then change the height of it to it's nice and long like this. And I can use this to represent that shadow. What's nice is it's got the hole in the back of the chair there. And so that works out really, really nice having the back. Now you have that nice projected shadow. Then from here, I'll select every single object that's in the room. Like this and this one, all these objects. And then I'll go ahead and turn an object shadow on. Custom object shadow. Let's make sure the blur is way down. And then I'll go ahead and have the shadows going away, casting away from the fireplace itself. There you go. So now we have a nice shadow projecting from here. We have some shadows here. And where that light source is, it looks like I need to move the shadows a little bit. If you don't have a very good eye for cast shadows, the trick is that just to use line work to help you out. So sometimes what I'll do just to kind of help me out is I'll throw down some lines. And these are going to be light projection lines. And this sometimes helps me to figure out which direction the shadows will be. Now you don't have to do this if you don't want to. I don't do it every time because sometimes I just eyeball it. There we go. It kind of works with the projection of there. You got a shadow there. These shadows can be more blurred because, again, the light source is further away. So those lines kind of help. Now we have some competing light sources inside of this room right here. So why don't we use a regular orange light on top of that? And then we'll use another yellower light and then put that right there like that. Let's also bring the opacity down a little bit. And then let's use another light source. And what I'll do is I want to show, it could be nighttime. If it's nighttime, then why don't we desaturate it to where it's a white light and that can represent moonlight. So I can go ahead and just put this little light right there on top like that. And whichever light is the stronger light source is the one that's going to have more power and the one that's going to probably do more projection of the shadow. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have two shadows. You can, and I'll show you how to do that. First, the more dominant light source in this room is going to be that candle, right? While the moon is further outside. So the dominant light source is going to be this one. So what I should consider doing is using the shape tool to subtract this section right here to make sure that there's no, oopsie, my bad, is the add on there. Nope, shouldn't be any merge shape. 1 second here. Let me select that. There we go. Oh, I see. My mistake. I selected everything. Let's lock it all. My bad. There we go. And then I'll show you that little trick. We'll go to shapes, and then there are all my shapes right there. Great. I just need to look for, let's see here. Oh, it looks like that area is fine, so we don't need to do anything there. Great. All right, so let's do the shadows inside of here. So what I'll do is I'm going to select everything in this room, this. I'm not going to do paper. It's kind of thinner. And then what I'll do is I'll have the shadows projecting away from the candle. So let's go ahead and bring the blur down a little bit, and then we'll change it to where it's projecting away from the candle. I'm going to do them all at once, and I'll have to individually change each one. About there looks good. Let's bring the intensity up a little bit more. There we go. The light source. That looks a little bit better. This right here needs to be moved a little bit this way to fit with the light source. This one looks fine. This one looks fine. There we go. That looks good. Okay, yeah, there's no light there. Going there. That looks good. Okay, let's do a couple more things. Let's do some extra shadow work. I'll use that same shape that I used before to make the shadows, that black. And what I'll do is I'll go to add mode, and I'm going to just do a little bit of shading, some last bit of shading and a little bit of highlights. And I'll show you how I go about doing that. Let's bring the size of the brush down a little bit. There we go. And the way that I'll go about doing this is that you would expect this right here, this bed where the foot is, you'd expect a little bit of a shadow being cast from that, right? Because the light source. So why don't we bring the size down even more? There we go. Let's bring the layer up to the right layer. There we go. And I'll just add a little bit of light or a little bit of shadow right there. You would expect some shadow there. Let's add a little bit more shadowing to this piece of the guitar, or the lyre is going to be a little bit bigger. So we can add a little bit more shadow there. Shadow in the corner is fine. Why don't we add some shadow along this ledge here? Let's put them along the bed. Along here looks fine. Along here. Where's that light source? It goes there. We put a little bit in this corner here. That looks good. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, that looks good. Why don't we add in the highlights? The way that I go about highlights is the line tool. I'm going to choose whatever color the light is. So this orange color kind of makes sense. I'm going to bring the blur up. And what I'll do real quickly is I'll just draw one little path real quickly so I can see what it looks like. I think the size needs to go down. The blur needs to go down a little bit. There we go. That looks a little better. Looks like there might be a black shadow. Let's turn that off. Let's change the blend mode to overlay. There we go. And then we should also bring the opacity up so I can really see it. That looks good. Let's make sure the layers on +5. That looks good. Okay, that looks good. Now that's set. Now we can start adding in the highlights. And let's put one right here where you would kind of expect. Right there. Let's put a highlight right here along this thing. You would kind of expect. Let's put a highlight along this base of this. Let's put a little bit of highlight along right there. Not behind that, because the shadow is going to be cast there. Let's add a little bit more. Let's add a little bit more here. There we go. You could add a little bit of cast shot, a little bit of light along there. Let's add a little bit of light along here, wherever it's going to be exposed. So light should go to there, and there should be a little bit of light right there as well. Let's put a little bit on the guitar right here. That should be good. Okay, let me just take a step back and look at it. Yeah, that looks good. Why don't we add some more highlights here? Let's add some highlights along here where this table is. See where the light source is right here. So let's make sure to put that in there. Let's put some highlight there, here, there. Not this, because there's a table right there. You could put it right there if you want a little bit. If the table is tall enough to where the light can go through, we could do that. Let's also put a little bit of light source all along this table, right where that fireplace is kind of projecting that light on there. Here, a little bit of light here, along here. That looks good. There we go. A little bit of light source there. Maybe some along here might work. Let me just take a step back and take a look at it. Yeah, light source looks good. Yep, there's highlights there. Perfect. Where are we at for time? 29? Perfect. Cool. All right. We were able to get at least almost one entire room pretty much done, or one entire house. So that's cool. So when we go to do the next one, we'll have all that set up. Look at that, 230 exchanges. Woo. Yikes. All right, hour and a half went by. Sweet. We got a lot done actually in that short period of time, and you really got to see how I kind of approach putting things together. We'll do a little recap. You build the terrain first. Don't worry about vegetation. When I say terrain, I mean rocks, hills, cliffs. That's terrain. Vegetation is going to be like trees, things like that. We'll add that in later. Once you've built the terrain, then you'll start making just a whole bunch of buildings using the grid, right? To make the shape, to make sure that the dimensions are right. Once you've kind of put together each building, you can kind of group it or select it all and then move it and rotate it. Okay, now obviously when you have a grid, if you're using a VTT, gridless movement, I think works best here. Just kind of a heads up on that. And then of course, once you've done the buildings, then you'll go ahead and do the interior decorating. Start with the largest furniture first. Beds, armoires, whatever it might be. It's a village, so a bed and probably the kitchen table for prepping the food is probably going to be your biggest ones. And then that way you can kind of place those big items first and then figure out what's going to go around that, right? You always start with the biggest stamp first in a room for interior decorating, so that way you can now place other smaller things so it doesn't get in the way. After, and remember, interior decorating is mostly about function. You can add in the fantasy elements. I generally add in the fantasy elements depending on what the building is, right? Whatever it might be. But for this one, most of it's utility. So most of the furniture is related to what the function of the room is. And then once you've put in all the furniture in the room, you can go with the details. And it's the same concept, function, right? What is the room being used for? If it's a kitchen, expect kitchen items, utensils, china, all that kind of stuff. It's a bedroom, expect things that you would expect in a bedroom, right? Maybe there's a guitar, end tables, there's a bed, there's going to be a cabinet or a dresser for putting in your clothing. Maybe there's a plant in there, right, for aesthetics. So when you're putting together interior decorating, function is going to be your biggest thing. Same thing with details, function. There's also a fantasy element as well that you can throw in later. But I think you guys get the overall concept. It's pretty easy. And we wrapped it up with our lighting, right, with shadows and highlights. And you'll see how well the shadows and highlights work quite well, right? They really help to give depth. One of the biggest tricks to making your map have depth, to making it look more, having more depth to it, is adding light and shadows. Like if you look carefully at a room in here, there's no light and shadow in here. It seems rather flat outside of the shadow on this half step here. But when we go over here, you see all the shadows and light work, and that really, really helps to get the room to look more like there's depth to it, okay? All right, so we'll probably continue on this series next month. And you know what we'll do? We'll just do the same thing we did here. We'll probably do all the decorating for all of the buildings. We'll resize it. We'll throw in all of our vegetation and stuff. Again, I throw in vegetation a little bit later so that way I don't have to contend with space for the buildings and the trees. This, when you add in the buildings first, then it kind of gives you a good idea of where trees will be. All right. I'm looking forward to seeing you all next week. There's some holidays coming up for people. Also, I think next week I'm going to reschedule the stream for Friday because I'm going to go on a vacation, little 4-day weekend on Thanksgiving weekend. So I'll reschedule that. It'll either be rescheduled for next month or I'll reschedule it for sometime next week so we can fit in 3 streams next week, maybe. Okay? Or not 3, sorry. We can fit in that stream somewhere, maybe Monday or Tuesday. I don't know. We'll see. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Appreciate you. Thanks for letting me mumble on. I will see you all next week. Have a great weekend, okay? Auf Wiedersehen.